Good evening and welcome to tonight's class. Tonight's topic is going to be preserving your pictures, home movies, and slides. And I'm your instructor this evening. My name is Chris, and I'm joined here by David, who's going to be assisting me with the chat tonight, as well as Jamie from our genealogy department. This class is created in conjunction with the Preservation Week at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. And Jamie, do you want to include some details about what's going on this week?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you guys so much for coming tonight. My name is Jamie Middendorf. I'm the genealogy and local history librarian at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. And I'm so glad to see so many familiar names in the crowd tonight. So in celebration of Preservation Week, we have this program tonight, and then tomorrow, Wednesday, April 28th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we have Tina Beard, who's a librarian at the Plainfield Public Library. She's also heavily involved in the Illinois State Genealogical Society and I believe the Illinois Library Association and other library and genealogy activities. And she's going to be with us to talk about how to preserve valuable family documents, photos, fabric, glass for future generation. And she's going to be talking more about the storage and how to keep those items safe. So you can register online. The registration is open for it, and we really hope to see you there.
Thanks, Jamie. So before we begin, just some quick ground rules. There's no reason to have your microphone or your video camera on. If you have any messages, go ahead and drop that in chat. We will have people monitoring that the whole time, and I will answer your questions along the way. Yeah, that's about it. So let's begin. So what I want to start off with tonight is a definition for a word that I'm going to be using a lot. And that word is digitize. And as you can see here, it means to convert pictures, text, or sound into a digital form that can be processed by a computer. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about tonight, is taking old formats, whether they're photos, film, or VHS, and converting them into digital formats that can later be viewed on a computer or a TV, or saved on a flash drive and given as a gift. So I'm going to be using the term digitize or digitization a lot this evening. So the very first thing that we're going to cover is photos and slides, specifically what photos and slides might look like, and you'll probably go like, oh, I have those at home, as well as the equipment that would be needed to digitize them. So on this first slide, I have 3 different examples on the screen here, and I'm sure they look very familiar to some of the formats that you might have at home. So on the left-hand side, that's just a basic photo. This is something that, you probably took a picture on one of the disposable cameras, and you went to Walgreens or Walmart, 15, 20 years ago to get a physical copy handed back to you. That is something we can digitize and make a digital copy of. And then in the middle here, what we have are 35 millimeter slides. And these are individual slides contained in a dense piece of cardboard, usually heat sealed, so the slide won't easily be removed. And then finally, on the right side, we have an image of a film negative. And this would be from like a photography camera, where you would take the film out in a dark room and you would process it yourself. We would use something like that on a flatbed to scan it and digitize it or colorize it. So in this next slide, I have pictures of the different types of digital storage options that you could potentially save those photos and slides on. So from left to right, we have flash drive, which you might know is a thumb drive or a thumbstick. That is something very small that you could attach to like a key ring. That is something that you could save data on, and it would be able to plug into a computer or the back of a TV. In the middle, we have an external hard drive. This is similar to the memory inside of your computer. Most computers have a hard drive in it that is actually in this shape. The difference with this one is you can actually travel around with it and plug it in via USB. And then finally, we have a CD or a DVD. These both look very similar. A CD is for audio files, and a DVD is for video files. So you could save audio clips on there if you have a old record or cassette, or if you have a VHS that you convert to a digital file, you could watch it with a DVD. And on this slide, we have 3 different types of equipment that you could potentially use to digitize this stuff. Now, even though I'm showing this as a potential example of something that you could purchase, I want you to know that we do offer equipment here at the library that we'll talk about a bit later on tonight that you could potentially use for free. This stuff is just up here in case that you did feel like you wanted to pursue owning something at home and using it. And what I have here from left to right, the very first thing is a printer. If you had like a normal photo, you could use the scanner on the top of it, or if it was saved to a SD card, which is a memory card, you could bring up the photos that way and print them. The thing that we have in the middle here, the Epson Perfection V600, is something actually we use here at the library. This would allow you to scan not only photos, but slides and film strips or film negatives. And it works fantastic. I highly recommend coming in and using it, but you can see down below the price of it is $230 if you were interested in owning something like this. And then finally, we have the Epson Fast Photo scanner, and this is specifically for 4x6 photos that, once again, referencing like old disposable cameras that you get the film processed in a stack. You could take old photos and put them in here, and it would scan them in the matter of like 5 seconds, like a stack of 35 photos all at once. It's a fantastic piece of machinery. Just the fact that so many people, growing up had disposable cameras taking pictures, and now they're just living in albums, and you're flipping through them, maybe they're deteriorating. This piece of machinery is perfect for scanning photos quickly and efficiently and getting you a digital file of it. This is something we also have at the library that you could potentially use. There were plenty of other scanners and printers such as these on the market. And that's something we can give you links to or give you price recommendations on. But as far as this goes, these are probably the cheapest to obtain and easiest to use. So the next thing that we're going to talk about in photos and slides, what do you need to know? So before I begin this, did anybody have any questions on the hardware that we just talked about? I might be moving a bit quickly. There's a lot to talk about tonight, so feel free to drop anything in the chat if you have any questions, or if you have something at home and you go like, oh, is this something I could potentially use in this example? Drop anything in the chat and we'll respond to it as we're going along here. So what I have on the screen right now is I want to talk about file types. So at some point when you're taking your old photo and you're scanning it, you're going to have the option to decide what file type it should be. And what I have here are 3 different file types that you could potentially save your old photos as. There's actually even more formats that you could potentially use, but these are the most common. The very first one we have is Jpeg. And this is great for smaller images, or if you're uploading to the internet and sharing with a friend, such as uploading like on Facebook. You're not going to run into any issues doing that with this file type. And it's going to open in the majority of programs on your computer as well. And you can see down below here, I have an example of what a typical file size might be. It might be even below 1 megabyte. It could go up to 15 megabytes. This kind of depends on how big the picture is, but JPEGs are typically small and easy to share amongst other people. Looks like we have a question in the chat. is there a piece of equipment that, oh, looks like somebody else just jumped in when I was reading that one. Is there a piece of equipment that you can preview slides? I have quite a few and I don't really need to scan all of them. Yeah, there is. You can get like a little type of light box where you just flip on a switch and it just lights up a screen, and you'd be able to put a individual 35mm slide on it, and that would give you the ability to look at it. If you don't want to pay for something like that, we want to have one at the library here that you could come by and take a look at. Otherwise, if you only have like a few slides that you want to look at, you could actually just hold them up to the light, and that would be one way to determine what they are. But we can take a look at the end, and I can provide a link to what that piece of equipment is. But there is something that does exist to do that. I just have to look up the particular name for it. And then we have another question. I have photos and negatives from them. What format is best quality / speed to convert in digital? So we'll be talking about the type of quality in a second when we get to DPI and PPI. Looks like we have another question. I've heard negatives are best versus photos to convert, but wondering how much better resolution they provide versus the photos. I mean, the original negative is going to be better than the actual scan typically. But if you're looking to preserve a photo, you're going to want to scan it and probably put it at like 600 DPI to get the most out of it. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to that portion, which is just a few more slides ahead here. But what I would recommend, though, if you are scanning a negative into a photo, I would probably try making it a PNG, just because that is easier to work with in applications such as like Photoshop or Illustrator or Lightroom if you were going to adjust it further. JPEG would work fine too. But PNG it's just a small file size, and there's transparency options with it. I recommend that probably over the JPEG if you're looking to alter the photo further. And then last we have Tiff. Tiff are good for archiving. So Tiff is it's typically used for a lossless compression, which means you get a higher quality image overall. Lossless compression reduces file size without removing any bits of information, which is the data for it. Instead, this format, the lossless compression, works by removing redundancies within data to reduce the overall file size. Without lossless, it is possible to perfectly reconstruct the original file if you needed to. So TIFF is good for archival, and if you want to try and keep the file size small and just leave it alone. But if you were looking to do printed copies of it, I'd recommend a TIFF file over a PNG or JPEG. JPEG and PNG are more so if they're going to live on the internet, or if you're going to share them through text message or like Facebook or some other website that would be for sharing online. But when you're uploading and scanning all these photos, they are going to, if you're going to have a lot of them, it's going to take a lot of space. So that's something you're going to have to think about. TIFF can be big files, but you could end up seeing only like one photo being like 4 or 5 megabytes. It really depends on what the photo is of and how large. But these are different options that you can choose from. If you're looking for something that's going to work on every single type of application, JPEG or PNG is recommended over TIFF. The next thing we're going to talk about is image quality. And this goes back to the question we were asked by Anita. So a very important term with photos is PPI or DPI. PPI stands for pixels per inch. I typically use DPI, which is dots per inch, but they are the same thing. They just go by different names. And as you can see on the right here, I have an image, and it just looks like a bunch of blocks. Well, if I were to zoom out of this image, I'd actually be able to see this image very clear, and I wouldn't see any of those squares. We're seeing those squares right now because we've zoomed in, and all these squares are fairly visible because we've chosen a certain PPI that we apply to it. If I zoomed in any more, it would get very fuzzy. What this is basically saying, I want my photo to have these many pixels or this many dots. And if you have an image that you want to make larger, you're going to want to make it have a larger DPI or PPI. If you're just sharing photos around the web or pasting them on Facebook, it's not a huge deal. You can see here we have some recommendations. 300 or 600 are probably what I would recommend for sharing them with other people. If you do plan on doing any photo editing or restoration to photos, such as fixing scratch marks or, let's say somebody has a red eye or something, then you're probably going to want a higher DPI so you can zoom in and get those details. I'm going to show you an example in a second here. But yeah, 300 is best for photos, 600 is best for enlarging photos, and it says the 2400 is best for slides and film. The reason why we have that higher PPI for slides and film is because typically people who come in with the film negatives, they're still in that raw format, so you'll be able to get a good scan out of it, especially with the higher number. When people come in with like the 4x6 or 4x8 photos that they got from a disposable Kodak camera 20 years ago, well, the photo was already processed at some point, so whatever the DPI or PPI at the time was, it's already almost like set at that. So you can always add a higher PPI or DPI to a photo to get a better a zoom in when you're trying to enlarge it, or if you're making it into like a poster. But that quality isn't going to magically fix itself over time because the photo was already processed at some point in the past. If you have a film negative and you're scanning that for the first time, like on our scanners here, go ahead and bump that PPI or DPI as high as you want because it's going to turn out good. But those normal photos, I highly recommend just sticking at 300 or 600 unless you're doing some photo restoration or photo editing in Photoshop. I know this could be a little confusing because most people will just say, well, why don't I just choose the higher PPI? Well, what will happen is every single time you change the PPI or DPI, that's pixels per inch or dots per inch, the file size is going to get larger. So you might think, oh, hey, I'm just going to put all my photos at 3000 PPI. Well, they're going to be very large, especially when you're scanning a lot of photos. So that's something to think about when you're scanning your files. If you really need that higher pixels per inch. If you're just scanning a normal photo, I recommend just leaving at 300 or 600. Jerome asks, will a recorded version of this presentation be available? Yes. I've taught this class previous to this evening, so you'll either get this version or my previous one, but both of them have the same amount of information. Except this version, I called out your name, so we want to do this version, obviously. So yeah, just think about that. 300, 600 are for the best. Anything higher, I recommend with film negatives. Now, what I'm going to show you here are a few different examples just so you can get an idea of what's happening when you change your DPI or PPI. You'll notice we have 3 images here, and each one of them have a bunch of little squares on it. And you can see from 72, we can make out every square. But as we go along to 300, it's harder to make out the squares, but there are more of them. This means we can continue to zoom in further on the image if we need to get in close to do any editing to it. This also means if you were to get a photo and you want to blow it up into a poster, you'd probably want a larger PPI or DPI size because it wouldn't stretch anything. If you have something where it's 72 PPI and you try and make it a poster and it's stretching it, you're going to get like really fuzzy loss of quality. And I took a picture here, and we're just going to go through a few different slides to show you the comparison. So what we have here on the left is a 300 PPI, and it's 400 kilobytes. That's nothing. And on the right, we have a photo that's 600 PPI, that's pixels per inch once again. That's about 1 megabyte. Both photos look pretty much the same, right? Now I'm going to go to the next slide where I've zoomed in 6 times. So we still have the 300 on the left and the 600 on the right. The file size hasn't changed at all. All I've done is zoomed in on the image. You'll notice on the left-hand side, we're starting to get a little fuzzy and like pixely. Whereas on the right-hand side, it's not really at that point yet. So just by changing the PPI and zooming in on a photo, you'll start seeing the pixels or like a fuzziness to your photo. I'm going to show you one more here. So on the left, I've zoomed in about 12 times, and on the right, same deal. You'll notice that I can continue zooming in on the right because I have more pixels per inch. So the more pixels you have, the more you can continue zooming in and editing it. Whereas on the left, we only have 300 pixels per inch. So at some point, I've kind of hit my limit. You'll notice that it's very fuzzy and very blocky. Looks like Tetris. Whereas the image on the right almost looks like the one that we had here on the left previously. So the more pixels per inch that you have and the more that you zoom in, you'll begin to see a loss of quality. So if you can, 600 PPI is great. It's going to keep the photo looking good. And then if you do have to zoom in, you'll still have some of that quality. It's just with the 300, you'll notice that once we've zoomed in so far here, we are going to start not really being able to make it out anymore. And then when it comes to saving individual photos, what is the best option? And once again, we have here the flash drive, the external hard drive, the CD or the DVD. If you're scanning photos, I imagine you're doing a lot of them, just because you've probably taken a lot of pictures over time. For that, I'd probably recommend a external hard drive or a flash drive. Flash drives can, get pretty large in size now, and you can pick them up at Walgreens, Walmart, Target, just about anywhere. And they actually have sizes that go up to 1,000 gigabytes, which is 1 terabyte or TB. And a flash drive is something that you can just throw in your pocket or attach to a key ring. And external hard drive, you can see that the size is much larger, 16 terabytes. And that's huge. You could go all the way up to that. That's not really necessary. I personally have a few external hard drives that are 2 terabytes each. And that is more than enough for me. And I do a lot of freelance, photography and video editing work. So the terabytes, that's more so if you're going to have a lot of video files. And we'll talk about that once we get to the video portion of tonight. For photos, a small external hard drive or a small flash drive would be good enough. But a CD or DVD, that's more so if you end up choosing to share those photos of someone. It wouldn't really be a good option for the photos, specifically a DVD. The CD would be for audio files, so that wouldn't help you there. And plus, there's a cap on DVDs. There's a size limit of 4.7 gigabytes. And it's only going to run on a DVD player, and you basically have to make your photos into a slideshow. So it makes more sense to store your photos on a flash drive or an external hard drive. And we even sell flash drives here at the library at our checkout desk. But otherwise, you can pick up a flash drive or an external hard drive pretty much anywhere, Walgreens, Best Buy, Target, and so on. But they're fairly easy to use and they have lots of space. So are there any questions specifically on photos or slides before we go into the video portion of tonight, specifically video formats? Don't be shy if you have a question. We're here to troubleshoot and answer for you. Ron asks, how much space would a slide use on a flash drive? A single slide might only be a few kilobytes or like 1 megabyte. So it would not be much space. For that, you could probably take, thousands of individual slides on a flash drive and it still would not take up the whole thing.
I have one other question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So so on the negatives question, so if I was going to scan in a negative, then I need kind of like you showed that Epson Perfection, the V600, which has had some good reviews online for doing that.
Yeah.
Or is something like that at the library?
Oh, we do have it at the library. We actually have a few of them in our studio rooms. And, I'll talk about it right now. So currently, our studio rooms are closed, but we moved the equipment into a quiet space near our computer lab. So all that equipment is still available, and that specific scanner we do have available for scanning photos, slides, and 35mm slides.
Okay.
And then, of course, somebody would be here to assist you on how to use the application and show you how to save them in the different formats. So you could even, plan to come in and scan everything, not knowing which DPI or PPI you wanted. And then after scanning them, you could determine which one you want by looking at the finished option. And
that's great because
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the problem with slides, sometimes it's kind of hard to make out what image it is or version of photo.
And if you're bumping the PPI up or the DPI, you're going to have a better chance of making out those small details. That's the only catch with, I would say the good thing with choosing a higher DPI or PPI for something like that. But you're going to notice that the file size is going to get quite large.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
For those slides, you mentioned that for the library equipment, can I use the equipment to view them first before I scan them? Just I can see them first there?
Yeah, of course. We allow that, and sometimes what will happen is, especially with the home movies, which we're going to get into in a second, somebody will say, oh, I just want to watch my VHS, and they'll watch half of it and then say, oh, I want to record it now. And we'll be like, well, maybe we should have recorded it at the beginning because we would have saved you some time. Because and I'll talk about this in a second with the film stuff, but all that stuff is in real time. But you're more than welcome to come in and just view the stuff without transferring it if you wish.
I mean those slides, those negative slides.
Yeah.
I use those. You can view all of them first before I decide which one I want to really scan them, right?
So you would be able to, are you talking about the 35mm slides or the individual?
The slides, both slides and the negatives. I have those old ones.
Yeah, so with the machine that we have here, you would need to scan it first, and it would give you a preview image, and then you could decide if you want to save it or not. So you would still have to go through the process of actually scanning it.
Okay. So I do have to scan it then. Okay, in order to see them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go ahead and we're going to begin the home movies section now. And I did have a one last note I want to mention to you guys, and this was recommended by Jamie earlier. But with genealogy work, it's only recommended to use flash drives as temporary storage, and to have stuff saved in 3 places. One place out of the home in case of a fire or something, or if you want to do something like cloud storage, that's an option. So just keep in mind the different areas that you could possibly save your digitized photos or videos in. And we can always direct you to what those might be. Personally, I have a flash drive that I carry with me at all times that has some family photos and videos on it. And then I have an external hard drive at home that also has the same stuff on it. And then I use something called Google Drive, which gives me some space for free, I believe 15 gigabytes. I have some important family videos on there as well. So when you are saving all these files, Just think about how you want to store them and if you want to make additional copies of it. You know, sometimes we even have people who come in and they'll scan everything and then they'll go out and get additional flash drives and save the data on there, not just for themselves, but they'll actually do that to give them out as gifts around Christmas time. And we do have a question down here from Ken. What about third-party providers to digitize photos or negatives? Any recommendations? What about Legacy Box? We're actually going to get to that. That is one of the things that we will talk about. So we will continue on with the home movies, and then we'll talk about that in a bit, Ken. So you have one of these at home, and you want to digitize them. So what we have here is our first image is a VHS tape, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and a VHS-C tape, which is much smaller. These typically will go into a normal VHS player, and the VHS-C goes into a type of tape adapter. The tapes that we have in the middle here, we have a Video 8, a High 8, and a Mini DV. You can see that these are very similar in size. The two on the top, though, those go in a specific type of player, and the one on the bottom goes in a different type of player. Even though these tapes look all the same to maybe some of you, they actually work in different machines. And then on the right, we have some examples of film, specifically 8mm, Super 8, and 16mm. You can notice that the little squares or the sprockets are different sizes. This will let you know what type of film you have. And a lot of the time when we have people come in here and want to use one of our pieces of technology here to convert one of these film reels, they often say they have 16mm, but they don't end up having that one. So if you're not sure what type of film you have at home, take a look at the sprockets and see if you have 8mm, which are just normal rectangle ones, or Super 8, which are slightly smaller rectangles, or the 16mm, which has a rectangle on each side. That would let you know it's 16mm. And when it comes to saving those, once again, we have flash drives, external hard drives, CDs, or DVDs. For something like this, I probably recommend going with an external hard drive because if you're doing something like the 8mm film, it ends up saving it in a RAW format, and the file size for that can end up being quite large. I'm talking 20 gigabytes for a 15-minute film. And it can take a long time to also render and save that data. So sometimes an external hard drive might save the data faster than something like a flash drive, depending on what type of USB plug it has. So you can look for faster external hard drives. Those will cost more money, and they're usually a larger size. That's entirely up to you, though. But a flash drive would still work for something like this. And the nice thing with the VHS and the 8mm and the 8mm film reels, those can actually be digitized onto a DVD disc. So if you didn't wish to have a flash drive or an external hard drive, you could save that on a disc and pop that right into your DVD player and watch an old film. The only difference is you wouldn't be able to access the data on the DVD as easily. If you wanted to get the data off the DVD, you would have to put that on a disk burner and extract it using a type of software. And I do have a recommendation for what type of software you could use in a second. So what I have here on the screen right now is 3 different pieces of equipment that we use here at the library, or that you could possibly invest in yourself. On the left-hand side, we have something called the Elgato video capture. Elgato has been around for quite some time, and they are pretty big with video capture cards. What we have here is a $80 or $90 piece of equipment. I bought it when it was $80, but it is $90 now. This is something that you could plug into a VHS player if you had one at home and plug it directly into a computer, and you would be able to digitize old films at home without needing to come into the library. What I actually ended up doing is I made a piece of equipment that you could check out here that would come with that capture card, and we'll talk about that a bit later. In the middle here, we have a player or a recorder. Typically, to view these files, you will need a VHS player, or if you have the camcorder still at home, you could view them that way and use a set of cords that we would have here at the library, or that you could check out to view the videos. That big piece of machinery in the middle, that is a reel-to-reel kit. That is taking a 8mm or 16mm film and digitizing it. And it runs all in real time. So if the film is an hour, you'll have to sit there and watch it for an hour. And on the right side, we just have some examples of what audio and video cables look like. Those colored ones are probably very familiar. And those, we got an S video cable up there as well. These typically go in the back of a VHS player, maybe connecting directly into a camera to view the files. So when you're saving a video, while you're digitizing it, you do have some different options when it comes to the file type. These two are the most common file types that you're going to run up to on the internet or using a computer. It's MP4 or MOV. And both of them produce wonderful video quality. You're not going to really notice a difference between both of them. The only thing that you might bump into is if you have an Apple computer, you might run into an issue where the MP4s might not necessarily play all the time. But otherwise, both files work perfectly fine. And typically, when you're digitizing, it's going to give you an option between an MP4 or an MOV. Now, when you're saving the video, sometimes you also have an option for the video quality. And you guys are probably familiar with these formats if you have a large high-definition TV at home, or if you go on a website like YouTube and you change the video quality depending on your internet connection. So you can see that we have an example on the right-hand side of these colored boxes. We have 480p on the right-hand side, and then 720p in the middle, and 1080p on the left-hand side. So these are showing how large the screen size would end up being if you chose that resolution for your video. Back when YouTube first began, the videos were like in 360 and below. And back then, that seemed like an amazing option to provide over the internet for streaming video. But now, the standard or high definition video that's readily available now is 1080p. And that is typically the size of most of our computer screens or TV screens that we have. So you're always going to want to see if 1080p is an option when you're saving your video files, when you're digitizing them. Anything lower than that, it's going to be a smaller video, which is okay. I mean, some videos were shot maybe originally at 480. So you might not want to bump it up to a larger size, because what will happen is you'll just get black borders on the edges, or you might try and enlarge the pixels, and then it would look blurry. So sometimes it's not worth taking an old video and enlarging it. And you'll see that in our example here. So here we have a screenshot of a 360p video resolution screenshot or screen grab. You'll notice that the picture takes up most of the screen, and on the sides are just these white borders. The white borders aren't actually there. But then if I were to bump it up to 720, the video would actually have these black borders on it because it's trying to make the picture large enough to fit the 720 resolution. So you can notice that the video quality on this did not change. So sometimes it's not worth bumping it up. I'm just flipping right back between both of them to show you. So once again, this image shows you 480p, 720p, and 1080p. I recommend sticking with 1080 if that's the option. Otherwise, if your video was originally shot at a smaller format, it's probably best to just leave it like that. Otherwise, if you're fine with those black borders on the side, go ahead and bump it up. But you'll notice that it didn't change the video quality at all. If anything, you might lose the quality of your video by making it larger because it's trying to stretch the pixels to fit the size of your TV or computer monitor. And once again, we're back to what is the best thing to save them on. Same thing as before, these items are out there. They can be used for photos, slides, and video. And I recommend an external hard drive if you're going to be doing video because videos take up a larger amount of space compared to photos or slides. Videos are going to be gigabytes worth of file space, whereas photos are going to be megabytes or kilobytes, which are extremely small. So if you're planning on doing video, look into getting an external hard drive or a large flash drive. If you do plan on saving your videos to a DVD, you might have to end up actually compressing it, and that could potentially give you a loss in quality. Sometimes it won't, but you are basically squishing a file down to a smaller file size. So you are more or less losing bits or in this case, you could look back at like DPI or PPI. If you're compressing a video, you are losing those pixels when you're taking it from a larger resolution to a smaller one. Next on this slide, I have two different apps that I recommend for viewing video files. The first one is VLC. It looks like a traffic cone. This is something that we have on all of our computers here at the library. This application will pretty much allow you to watch any type of video file. So you might run into a video file that might not run on your Apple computer, but if you downloaded VLC, you'd be able to view it just fine. Looks like we have two questions here. If you were digitizing an old home VHS tape, can you record, then fast forward, then record more? Some of our videos have pauses in them. Yes, you could record the video, and then if there's a pause, you could fast forward. The only catch with digitizing VHS tapes or 8mm tapes is everything is in real time. So if you're recording a wedding, it's going to take, if the wedding was 2 hours, you're going to be sitting there for 2 hours. But based on your question here, if there were some empty spaces in that wedding video, you could fast forward and skip those bits. But just in general, for everybody's knowledge, when you're digitizing video, it is in real time. You won't be able to skip stuff. If you do, that stuff's not going to be recorded. So keep that in mind. We have another question here. Would you lose quality if transferring from an external drive to a flash drive? No. If you're transferring from one storage unit to another, it will not make a difference. Looks like we began having a question here. How much space? Catherine, if you want to type a little more, I can answer your question. While she's typing that. This other application here is Handbrake. It's a pineapple with a drink. This would allow you to take videos that, let's say you want to play them on a different device and they haven't normally been working. Handbrake would be there to convert the file to a different format. Otherwise, let's say you have a DVD that has video footage on it, and for some reason you can't get the footage off of it or can't play it, you could put it into your disk drive, open up Handbrake, and you'll be able to extract the video files. You could save them then on a flash drive or something. Okay, so Catherine was asking how much space on a DVD will an 8mm reel take? So, go back here for a second. So a CD or DVD drive, or CD or DVD that I have here, specifically a DVD, can take up to 4.7 gigabytes. And this is very specific on DVDs. You'll see it that it says 4.7 gigabytes. For something like a 8mm reel, if it was short, you might be able to fit it on there, but more likely or not, you would have to take that film and compress it. because the transfer process with the 8mm film makes into a raw format, which makes it a very large file type. Typically, the people who come in here and work on digitizing 8mm film or 16mm film end up having huge files. I'm talking 10 to 20 gigabytes. So typically what we end up having to do is compressing that footage using an application on a computer here, or putting it in a video editing application and saving it, and that will make it smaller as well, allowing us to fit it on a DVD. So it is possible to fit a 8mm reel on a DVD, but it's hard to determine how much space. We would definitely have to compress it or save it in another format to make it fit. It's not just going to fit automatically. So VLC, Handbrake, just something to keep in your back pocket, everyone. VLC, it's a program that will run pretty much any type of video codec, and I'm talking about like the .mp4 or .mov or what's another one, .avi, anything that's at the end of a video, like a dot something, it's going to be able to run it on VLC. So if you run into any trouble opening up a video file, download VLC. It's free to use. Same thing with Handbrake. Handbrake is for converting video files to other formats or taking the data off a DVD and then saving it as a digital file. So the next thing I want to show you is something that was actually asked in our chat earlier about what kind of services do we recommend, like Legacy Box or something. The first thing that I have here is the Walgreensdvdtransfer Com. These are some of the different things that you could possibly send to Walgreens and they would convert the stuff for you. You can see that they do take videotapes. They do take 8mm and 16mm film. They also take photos, which are prints, slides, and negatives. So they pretty much take everything that we would help you do here at the library for free. So if time is of the essence, this might be a good thing to look into. But if you're looking to do this for free and be the person in charge of knowing how to do it, we do have those services at the library for people to use. So this is something for you guys to look up on your own time if you are interested. It's Walgreensdvdtransfer Com. And this is something anybody can use, but it will cost money. And the other one that was asked about in the chat was Legacy Box. So you can see here, there are 3 different examples of things that you could possibly send in. They, once again, will take pictures, tapes, and films. It just comes down to, you know, if this is the company that you want to drop your stuff off with, and if it meets the amount of tapes for the price. I'll flip back between the Walgreens one for a second, so you can take a look at the prices again. And then there have been plenty of people who have gone out and done these services, and then they find out later on, like, oh, we had the services at the library all along. Why didn't I just come here and do it myself? But these services are out there, and you know, if you are in a rush to convert stuff, I recommend them. But we do have the stuff at the library if you're willing to take the time to learn how to use the equipment and be in charge of saving all the stuff yourself. I'll stay on this page for a few seconds for you guys as well. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the studio at the library. So the studio is a space at the library. They're kind of like meeting rooms, but they focus on you know, working on creative projects and using equipment that might allow you to digitize stuff similar to what we're talking about tonight. And currently the studio is closed, but we took some of the equipment out of the studio and put it in an area near our computer lab for you guys to use if you do choose to come in and want to learn how to convert this stuff yourself. And it looks like we have a question. Do I need a reservation to convert 16mm movies? And can I get your help? Yes. And I'll talk about that right now, actually. So in conjunction with the studio, we allow one-on-one appointments here at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. So these one-on-one appointments, they can be on topics of, it can be on anything. It'd be, I want to learn Facebook. I want to learn how to use an iPad. Or it could be, I want to convert 16mm film and save it on a DVD for a friend. You could make a one-on-one appointment for that. And you would most likely be paired up with me, and I would show you how to convert your old video or photo formats into a digital format. So you would have to make a reservation. Typically during these reservations, we will show you how to use the equipment. We'll be here to answer any questions. But the goal of the studio is it's self-directed. So while we're here to answer questions and help you during appointment time, the expectation is you are going to become familiar with the equipment and you're going to learn how to use it. So over time, you will be working on your own. That's the expectation here. Versus those other options we had, such as Legacy Box or Walgreens DVD Transfer, where you give the stuff off to them and they take care of it for you. The expectation of the studio and the digitization equipment here is that we're going to teach you how to use it and you're going to become a master at it. But you're more than welcome to ask us for assistance and we will help you with it. And we got David dropping links in the chat if you want to schedule an appointment. Go ahead and click on those if you're interested, and we'll be here to help you with that. And then Ron has a question here. How much time can I reserve on the library equipment? So the studio space, we allow 2 hours. If you are converting something though, you can ask us and we will give you an additional hour as long as nobody has a reservation after you. And currently we only have one spot available in the library for the studio because the rooms are closed. So capacity is kind of tight. So if you are interested, sign up for a reservation and we'll be sure to make sure you get a spot, and we'll make sure someone's there available to help you out. Currently though, we don't have a specific day and time when the studios will reopen. If you are interested in the studios just in general, keep track of our website and our social media to keep up to date with any news about reopening that space. So now we're going to be talking about the specific equipment that is actually in the studio that we take out for digitization. So on the left, we have the flatbed scanner, which was one of the examples that we showed at the beginning. That's the Epson V600. This will allow us to scan photos, slides, and film negatives. And it goes pretty quickly, but if you up the DPI or PPI, you will see longer than 30 seconds. But typically, if you're doing 300, it's going to be a short amount of time to scan each photo or slide. And currently, we have 2 of them at the library in our studio spaces. We also have a batch slide scanner. This device would allow you to scan 35mm slides, and it can do about, I think a tray takes about 80 of them, and it's 2 seconds per slide. And we actually have you can see that little rectangular device at the very bottom, that stick. That would allow you to turn on the photos to take pictures automatically. So once you turn that on, it would do all the work for you. The only thing that you really have to do is load your photos into the carousel located at the top of the machine. And this machine is specifically for the 35mm slides. 2 other pieces of equipment that we have here is the Vhs Conversion Kit. This kit will allow us to convert VHS tapes, VHS-C, Video 8, and high Video 8, and then mini DVs. There is a catch, and I mentioned this earlier. When you are converting videos to a digital format, everything is in real time. So like the example about the wedding earlier, if the wedding is 2 hours, you're going to have to sit there for 2 hours and watch it actually convert. Looks like we have a question about, can you bring your own loaded carousels? Yes, you can. The only thing with that is we've noticed that Kodak carousels work the best. Anything that isn't Kodak sometimes might not be compatible with the machine. Otherwise, if you have a tray or carousel that is larger than 80, Sometimes it will skip slides. So what we're going to want to look for is a carousel that might be made by Kodak and have about 80 slots on it. That works best with our machine. And the next machine that we have here is the reel-to-reel film kit. This will take 8mm Super 8, 16mm film. This machine, once again, is in real time. This means that if it's a 1-hour war video from World War I, you will be sitting there for an hour. And also the reel-to-reel kit here, this was the piece of machine that actually has those raw format files that are going to be really large. So if you're specifically doing 8mm Super 8 or 16mm, I highly recommend having a external hard drive to save the photo or videos. It's just going to be easier to transfer the stuff and store the stuff. And the last section we're going to talk about is library of things. So the studio is about in-house equipment, whereas the library of things is equipment that you can actually take out and take home with you. So the very first thing I want to talk about is the VHS to digital converter. So what I did is I took the VHS kit that we had here and I made a copy of it with that Elgato video capture card that I talked about earlier. This is something that you could take home and plug into your computer and do all the work at home. And you wouldn't have to worry about a 2 to 3 hour slot at the library. So if you're worried about, having a bunch of tapes and not enough time to go through each one of them, this might be the best option for you, is checking out a library of things item. Library of things items are only available to Arlington Heights card holders, though. So if you have a Arlington Heights card, you are more than welcome to check out this VHS to digital converter kit. And this will help you convert VHS to digital videos. It is also in real time. So once again, if it's a 2-hour long video, you're going to sit there for 2 hours. The only difference at home is you can make a cup of coffee, walk away, and read a book or something. Next, we have a digital film scanner. This is for looking at negatives or 35mm photos, specifically in the cardboard. The only thing is the amount that you can actually put into this machine is very small. You can notice that there is a negative here sticking out underneath. That's about all that can fit in there at a certain point in time. And there's then also a arrow in the front. That is where you would put a like a 35mm slide into. And you only be able to do like one at a time. So this is if you only have a few that you need to convert, or if you just want to do it from home. If you have a lot of slides or negatives that you want to convert, I recommend using the equipment actually at the library. Looks like we have another question here. Can we legally copy our old VHS commercial movies to DVD? So as long as it's something that you have made that isn't made by a company like Disney, for example, you would be able to make copies of it. Most old films, like, we'll say like Aladdin, for example, will not actually show up on the screen. It will not process it. So the expectation is the stuff that you're bringing in and converting is your own material, not old films like Air Bud or Die Hard. Those just won't run on the machine. It's nothing that we're doing. It just won't show up on the machine. How does the Kodak negative scanner compare to the Epson Perfection V600? Are you talking about, if you're talking about the negative scanner that's right on the screen here, the Epson Perfection, I would say, would probably, it would give you more options as far as saving files. This would save directly to an SD card, which is extremely convenient. Saving on the Epson V600, there would be a bit of time with scanning the photo and exporting it. So this would be quicker, but I feel like as far as quality and the resolution, like if you wanted to bump up the DPI or PPI, you would have more options with the flatbed scanner over something like this. This is more so like, oh, hey, I got to scan these quickly, and I don't really care how they're going to end up looking. I just want to scan them. So you're losing a bit of quality using something like this, but I still recommend it if you're looking to do something quick, or if you only have like one or two you want to scan. How long can you check out an item like the digital film scanner? So all of our library of things items can be checked out for a single week at a time. You are able to renew it if there aren't any other holds on the item. Otherwise, it's a week at a time. The next item we have is a document and a photo scanner. This is specifically for documents. I probably wouldn't put photos or anything through these, but if you have documents that you're looking to scan, like a birth certificate or something, you could use something like this. So that was it for the class, and you guys are more than welcome to ask questions. I just want to remind you that we do have another class coming up, Preserving Family Heirlooms, which is April 28th, which you guessed it, it's tomorrow. So if you haven't signed up for this one, go check it out. We're going to drop it in the chat right now. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop in the chat. I'll answer them. Otherwise, thank you for attending the class this evening. You guys have been wonderful to chat with. Otherwise, you are free to go.
I had one other question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. In the beginning of the presentation, you showed a picture of that Epson fast photo. Just curious, is that at the studio by chance, or is that just for reference?
I'm coming back here for you.
It was like you could load photos in it. That looked pretty cool. And
talking about the which one?
It was called Epson Fast Photo, when you were showing different.
Yeah, that one we do have at the library.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the right there. Yep, that's it.
That's one I haven't personally used for myself yet. I've used a few of these other ones to convert slides and videos for my family. I'm just a little scared because I have stacks of photo albums, and I know that if I begin using the fast photo, I'll be there all day or all week.
Right. Yeah, because I'm kind of just questioning like which is the best way to go with negatives or photos, and that photo fast looked awesome if you had a bunch. I guess the only thing is, then you kind of brought it up, is like maybe there's fade with processing factors that maybe might change what the original was. So
yeah, you can't really do anything about that with like when you're going through the fast photo here, because the raw format, the original film reel that you gave to a company to process, that doesn't exist anymore. So these photos have either collected dust or been bent. Whereas the negatives, if you still have those, that's still the raw format. You're probably going to get a good quality scan out of that if you put that on the Epson Perfection.
Okay. All right, great. That's great. You have that as a resource there. Oh, awesome.
I hope you come by and use it.
I will. Yeah, definitely. I was thinking about buying one, so I'm glad you have one.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. Looks like we have some other stuff in the chat though. Somebody wants me to provide my contact info. I can throw that in there in a second. Can glass slides be used in the Carousel scanner? Glass slides. These, I wonder, like, the only slides that can go in the Carousel are the ones that are encased in cardboard. There are other type of 35mm slides that I know are like a thicker plastic, or they have the metal casing around them. Those will not fit in the Carousel that we have here. It's only the ones that have the cardboard around them. So if you have a glass slide, we would have to actually end up using the flatbed scanner to scan it and play around with the settings to get something equivalent to using the Carousel. What else we got here? So we actually have a question probably for you, Jamie. Will the Preserving Family Heirlooms program be on the library YouTube channel?
That's a great question. So right now, I don't think it will be on the YouTube channel, but I am going to record it. So if you end up missing that program, you can shoot the library an email, you can shoot me an email, and once we have our video of it, then I can send it your way. but I don't think it will be available all access on our YouTube channel.
Thanks.
And then I could put my email address in the chat just so that you guys have it.
And I've gone ahead and thrown mine in there as well if you want to contact me about any digital related stuff. If you're looking to do something like this or something else, as I mentioned before, we do other things here at the library, such as teach people how to use iPads, or if you want to learn how to use Photoshop or like a video editing application, we help out with that as well. Looks like we got another question here. When you scan pictures, do you have any recommendations on saving them perhaps to more than one thumb drive? So when you scan or save a video, for example, it's going to make an individual file on the computer that you're working on. At that point, it's up to you to move them to different devices. So if I were scanning a set of photos, I would put them in a folder, and then I would plug in the first flash drive, drag that folder over to that flash drive, unplug that flash drive and put the next one in and repeat the process. There really isn't any other way around doing that with multiple storage units. You're just going to have to keep dragging the files over, ejecting the storage unit, the thumb drive, and putting the new one in and repeating the process. Tedious, but at least you're saving the stuff in multiple locations, so they're safe. Looks like we have another question. Are there any good quality handheld scanners to avoid feeding pictures into a machine? Oh,
Chris, I actually have some experience with
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
handheld scanner. I bought one, it was several years ago. It might have been like 7 years ago at this point. And it just took batteries, and I was really excited about it because a lot of my family members, like my great aunts and stuff, they have a ton of photos, and I wanted to be able to take something easily to their house and scan photos. And what I found was that since it relied on me moving the scanner over the photo, I had to move the scanner absolutely perfect. Otherwise, I would get a warped scan. So ever since I bought that and played around with it, and it wasn't very expensive, like the one I bought was probably less than $50 from Best Buy. Like I've always just relied on the scanning equipment we have in the library or the scanner that I have at my home printer. I've never tried to make an important scan with a handheld scanner again.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of extra effort.
It was. I would have to like use like the corner of the table and just like get it just so, because otherwise it would be goofy.
I know with like cameras, like specifically on like our newer phones, sometimes like when it's a holiday or like my parents' birthday or something, I'll take a picture on my the camera on my phone, and the quality will still be fairly decent.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recommend that for a stack if anyone's doing something like that, but our phones nowadays, the cameras on them are amazing. You should be able to take decent pictures with those if you're looking for a single copy of something. Can you add text to the photos? Yes. For something like that, there would be a different application for it. The stuff that we talked about tonight, and you might end up doing at the library for digitizing, that is just to make the digital file of the photo or video, depending on what you were listening to tonight. If you're looking to add extra things to the photos or videos, there are different applications to do that with, such as Photoshop. There's some free ones online though, like Canva. You'd be able to upload a photo that you digitized and add additional text to it if you wished. And we actually have a class coming up over the, I think, David, you might actually know. Is it in May or over the summer for the photo one?
I don't know offhand, but I will check and put a link in the chat.
Thanks. But we do have applications here at the library like Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, if you're looking to add additional text to a photo. But we are planning on actually teaching a class later on that would teach, it's aimed at small businesses, showing them how to make graphics for their businesses. But these applications that we're going to cover will actually show you how to add text to pictures. And those applications are also free, and they're on the web, so they're easy to use. So we'll wait and see if David has a specific date for the thing that I was mentioning. On the photo carousel with a camera attached, is that something I can do with my Kodak projector? What cable would I need? Is it a special camera? Yeah, so the carousel that I have there in that image was something I actually ordered from a company. It came with it. So if you have a Kodak projector at home and it has a slot, that's something that you could potentially email me about, and I would do the research to find out what type of attachment you would need to hook up your camera to your Kodak projector. The camera that's actually attached to this, it isn't actually anything special. It's the lens that came with it. It's a Kodak Carousel that I have here, but the camera is made by Sony. It just happened that the company that made this setup for the batch slide scanner had a specific lens that attached to the Sony camera, and the lens goes inside of the projector and meets in the middle where the projection would happen. So if you have a Kodak projector at home and you want to figure out how to hook it up, you could email me. I dropped my email up above, and you could send me some pictures and we could troubleshoot it together. Yeah, so David dropped the information for that, the create graphics for your small business, which is going to be on May 10th. That was to answer Sharon's question about putting text on photos. We're going to be teaching a class aimed at small businesses to create graphics, but these applications that we're going to be making the graphics in can work for anything. So if you just want to learn how to make simple graphics or add text to pictures or additional emojis on top of a picture, we will cover stuff like that. But if you're looking to restore photos or just learn how to use something like Photoshop or Illustrator, that would be something separate. Another question here. Can I save slides to a digital camera disc? Do you mean an SD card? So I'll just tell you guys right now. So the batch slide scanner, which we still have on the screen here, everything is being saved to a SD card. An SD card is a small chip that goes inside of the camera that can be pulled out and placed on the back of a computer typically, and it would bring up the photos. I'm not sure if that is what June is asking specifically here in the chat. That's what I think of when you say disk. But typically the ways to save, great, that's what I used in the past. Okay, perfect. Yeah, to save photos, typically on a camera, it's an SD card. That's how all DSLR cameras work now, or PowerShot cameras. It's all SD cards. And SD cards, if you don't have a flash drive, you could save your data on an SD card. The problem with that is SD cards can only hold up so much space, sometimes only up to 120 gigabytes. And sometimes the back of a computer might not have an SD card slot. But most Macintosh or Apple computers do have an SD card slot. So those are the computers that we use here at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library in our studio space. So you would be able to put an SD card directly into the computer.